Public Employees Committee only has 5, so we have 3 here, so that is a quorum, and we're gonna come to order and start the meeting, okay? I wanna say, Greg, I didn't invite you because we were gonna have a second part. I wanted to kinda, but that's okay that you're here, okay? I really wanted to hear from the side of, and you already know where I'm going, okay? Because I gave you heads up a long time ago, okay? Right, but I really wanted to hear from the personnel point of view about what was going on. The director can't be here. He sent some very capable people. Linda Thomas, and who's with you?
This is Brian Bradley.
If you guys would sit right here, I can kind of tell you what we're doing. Besides having my own firsthand view of forestry for 20-something years, and they've always done a pretty good job. These last couple of years has been overwhelming to me to watch what's going on. Would you shut that door, please, so we don't, to watch what's going on. And I've heard various people from all over complaining about it, okay? And I think that, so I want to tell you, I think forestry is getting a bad rap. Myself personally, knowing how I've interacted with them, and I don't think that they have enough employees. I don't think that I think we need to do something different. The Public Employees Committee is the one that actually is charged with investigating about how many personnel, how it works and things. So I'm not really trying to step on Alderman Vollmer, who is the chair of Forestry, Parks and things, but I am trying to do an investigation from the personnel aspect of it. And unfortunately, they cross over some, but we need to know what's going on, okay? I know that we have a law that says that grass cannot be over, 7 inches tall?
Right.
And we, are they out there? Okay, great. I know that we send out notices and we tell people they have to cut their grass and we fine people and that's all as it was meant to be. But the city seems to be the person or entity that's in violation of that notice more than anything. And again, I think that we put a lot of pressure on forestry because of course when I see it in my ward, I'm sending it to Mr. Jankowski. Jankowski, right? We've never met, and I sent him stuff, and he's a great guy. I tell you, he's done some above and beyond his call of duty for me. But as soon as I see mine, I'm turning them in. But when they're having to move around, then they can't stay on their schedule. And I think that they don't have enough people to really stay on their schedule. And then we have temporary and we have seasonal, I guess, employees. And I think especially with all the grass that has to be cut, there's an unfair part in other parts of the city who needs their trees trimmed and all the other things. So it's not just a North St. Louis thing. I think it's also a South St. Louis thing. And we need to look at another way of doing this, if we need to add more employees or what we need to do that could, or at least make a suggestion, and that's what we're charged with in this committee, how we can make a suggestion that we do something different and better. And I also think that we have to support public employees if they're doing their best and we haven't given them enough tools, and tools being employees and equipment to get their job done. So that's why I asked for this. I had several aldermen come and talk to me about it, and they were very upset. They're not getting their trees trimmed, they're not getting this. I know forestry is charged with a lot of things, from planting trees to cutting lots to doing a lot of things, to cutting property, trimming back bushes, trim everything. And it's hard to do all those things when your original concept, I think, was not to have to deal with LRA properties. That's a big difference, I think. And over the last few years with the people losing their houses and walk away from their houses, I think the increase in the total number of houses and property that forestry has to cut, it has increased substantially. And so this is on us and the executive department to change it. It's on the legislative and executive, and not to at least get information before we're critical of forestry. So I had sent Mr. Hayes a letter this summer, an email this summer, saying that when we came back in, I intended to try to do some hearings so that we can let it be known that we support public employees. I was going to invite him later. He's here because I also want to have an evening hearing because, oh my God, so many people found out about it and wanted to testify, to just say, I'm not getting my grass cut. I have some ideas about some things I've talked to Mr. Jankowski with. Am I saying your name
Yeah,
right?
it's of course Jankowski.
Jankowski, okay, about maybe letting people who live next door to these properties cut the grass and just like we notify the citizens that they notify LRA, hey, I live next door to this property, it can't be cut. We have neighborhood standards, it's a way above, and them being able to cut it and then maybe put some kind of lien or something against the property, and if LRA doesn't pay them back for it, in so many years it becomes theirs, because we cannot just allow this to go on. It's a health hazard to me, and I think that Forestry has had some of their equipment pulled away because of the problem we're having with trash pickup and stuff like that. So it's just one giant cycle. And so that's why we're having these hearings, to just see what actually happens, how it is, what goes on, how many properties LRA do they cut, what other things do they do, just an informative thing, and then maybe we as a committee could come up with some suggestions to do it different, or some other people can make suggestions to us. And I had asked the director to come and talk to me. I had sent some questions, which I think I sent to all of you. I emailed it to you about questions I had about what forestry does, and what types of classifications. Did you get it, Megan?
I don't think so.
Oh, I sent it. You didn't get it? Okay, well, I'll send it. I'll send it again right now, but I sent an email out saying, I want to know what the job classifications, what's the requirement of employment, what's the terms, how many employees, full, part-time, are there in forestry, who determines if there's enough employees to do the various jobs, what is the process to get additional employees if they are needed, what is a cease and desist letter with the Department of Personnel, send a cease and desist letter out to Forestry, because I know one of the things that in me becoming the chair of public employees, I read about that our first thing is to employ people full-time with benefits and things. So if we're having people do seasonal work when they should really be full-time, that's the kind of thing that we could suggest, stop making them seasonal, or only, I don't know what else. I think I got, I want to thank Linda, because she sent something about the different types. But if we need them to be full-time, then we need to hire them, give them the benefits, find some money in the budget and hire them. And especially for the people who leave at the end of September or whatever, with all the work that we have done, that just doesn't make sense to me right now that we're letting people go in September. In September, October, November, then maybe they could be doing the things that they couldn't do this summer. Instead of cutting grass, maybe they can get to the tree trimming. And they also have to plant trees and everything else, so they need more staff. And so I will send this email while I turn this over to Linda Thomas. You got my email, right?
Yes, I got your email.
Okay, so can you kind of tell me, can you kind of give us a little synopsis of personnel as it relates to forestry, please?
Well, normally when we start with the seasonal people, we start around in January, February.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I'm sorry. We did not call the roll. I started talking. So will you call the roll, please?
Alderman Williamson,
Unexcused.
Alderman Ornowitz,
Here.
Alderman Kotar,
Unexcused. No. He has to. He didn't tell me.
Alderwoman Green,
Present.
Alderwoman Tyus.
Present.
3 present.
With 3, we have a quorum.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Being that there's a quorum and I already started the meeting without calling the roll, I want to turn this over to you, and then I'm going to send the committee the email that I sent to you and the director.
All right.
Okay.
I'm Linda Thomas, Deputy Director of Personnel. We usually start, I've been doing this testing and recruiting for probably 30 years now, maybe longer. We usually start on our limited term people around in December or January, knowing that they're going to start them in April, March, late March, early April. They also have well, let me start at the beginning. We have limited term, we have career seasonal. When people first come in for the seasonal work, they come in as limited term. They work 1 season as a limited term. And at the end of that season, they either get end of temporary appointed, or they get put on a leave to come back the following season. If they get end of temporary appointed, they're gone, because they didn't work out the first season. If they put on a leave, they get returned on whenever, March, April. There's usually about 40 of them, 30 or 40, Greg, isn't there, that we return every year. And then Greg usually hires about 80, 90 altogether. So we usually have to come up with about 50 more people. Of course, they come in, they go out during the course of the summer. They don't work all of them straight through. At the end of September, October, they either go back on a leave, or they leave, or they get end of temporary appointed. We keep the list, we keep testing it. Keep it announced, keep taking applications, we keep testing throughout the year for it. This particular year, the appointments for the temporary people were staggered. They weren't brought in all at one time. They were brought in periodically. I think our last ones we brought in were May, weren't they, Greg?
We started 2 weeks late, we got due to budget concerns, we were
And then
told
we
need
brought
to
them in at
stagger
30,
time.
didn't we?
Right at the end of April.
Yeah, we brought them, started bringing them in at groups of 30 for this summer.
And,
Due to
okay,
budget.
wait a minute. And so why were they 2 weeks late?
I had a discussion with Mr. Walterman, my boss. He was concerned with budget concerns and told us that's what we needed to do.
Do you mind, since you're here, Greg, if we don't have the chairs filled, if you would come and sit right by Linda, you can
Fine.
kind of,
That's no problem.
thanks. Mr. Jakowski, you can sit at the table too, Jankowski, so, let's introduce ourselves, right, and that way, we can have a little round table up here. Mr. Allen, if you sit with Alderwoman, that way we can have a round table. Good discussion.
Sure. And Vicki Wakeland is also here.
Oh, Vicki, come to the table.
Not that I'm bringing you to the table, I'm just saying.
No, you're the ones that are gonna blame everything on, okay? Okay, so now would everybody introduce themselves so that people who are watching us later will know who you are?
Sure. Greg Hayes, Director of Parks, Recreation, Forestry, Soulard Market, Operation Brightside, St. Louis.
Vicki Wakeland, Executive Assistant to Forestry.
Alan Jankowski, Commissioner of Forestry.
Brian Beckelman, Manager of Recruitment and Examination and Personal Services.
Linda Thomas, Deputy Director of Personnel.
Okay, so what we're gonna do, so we will, if you have questions and he can answer them, we'll just let everybody answer and then we'll let the committee ask questions, okay?
Okay,
All right.
I think that'll work because some of this I've got to refer to Greg.
Right, and
And walks the
right on
walk.
time. Mr. Richard Franks can come to the table.
Sorry, I just got.
You can sit here. Alan, if you just move down one, and then he can sit there. we're having a round table discussion.
Okay, thank you.
Round table.
And will you introduce yourself for the people out there that's gonna watch us?
Yeah, certainly. I'm Richard Frank, Director of Personnel. I'm sorry I'm late. I just got done with the Civil Service Commission meeting, so.
Okay, and so Greg, you said we started 2 weeks late because
Correct.
there were budget concerns?
Correct. We also had, it's kind of it was unprecedented for, if that makes sense, for several years where we'd have to give money back. We also had to do that in Parks and Forestry. We had to give supply line item account funds back, which is kind of like telling me, you got $10 this year, but toward the end of the fiscal year, you now have $7. We're pulling some back. So we stagger hired. I wasn't a fan of it, but it's what we did.
Okay,
We'd like to start everybody, all 85 to 90, on the first or second Monday of April.
That's what we've always done, right?
Yeah,
Correct.
until this year.
Until this
Are
year.
you okay?
Yes.
Is it broken?
No.
Mr. Franks, we didn't ask that. Mr. Franks, if I could hold myself back, you can.
She's with our health insurance committee, so.
I'm recuperating.
I kept all those questions to myself, even though we know the questions that I asked at the health committee.
They were good ones.
It's nothing
Okay, I'm
sentimental.
sorry. All
So
right.
then they come on, and they stay on until around September. They've stayed on in the past at certain times as late as November, but that depends on how much money forestry has.
Correct. We
A
can
big,
we can
yeah.
ideally cut, it's not, nobody asked me a question on this, we could ideally cut through the end of November, but budgeting wise, we usually end the last Friday in September. A few fiscal years, we've drifted into October, which is outstanding if we're able to do that, because we can work them all.
And do you, when you're cutting, do you have time to do anything else besides cutting? I mean, because I know you're supposed to trim trees and
Sure.
you plant trees and all of that.
Separate crew, with all due respect, Chairman, that's the tree section. Each division has about 45 full-time employees, trees and weeds and debris. So with the grass cutting, we essentially I think it's very important to explain, With 90 seasonal folks, we essentially have, and this is getting in the weeds, no pun intended, we have about,
Well, let me take it as
well,
well.
we are budgeted for 90 individuals to cut grass on vacant lots and vacant buildings, whether they're LRA or private. That's essentially 20 two-person building crews, 2 people with a weed eater, about 25 people on those ag tractors you see. So that's about 65. The balance is a couple easement crews. I don't like to look at the city geographically, but we have an easement crew north and an easement crew, I don't want to steal your thunder, easement crew north and easement crew south. Those are 6 to 8 people that you see cutting on the fence line. MoDOT has this side, we have this side. They also do what I call dislocated locations, you know, the concrete medians that get weeds, and then we have a spray crew. That comprises our 85 to 90 people, and to answer your question, with upwards of 10,005 vacant buildings we're responsible for, and 75 million square feet of vacant lots, which amounts to about 20,000, 3,000 square foot lots. It's a lot for 85 to 90 people. That's why you don't see the frequency of these cuts in your wards. We cut about 6 vacant lot rotations in a 24-week period. That's 12 pay periods. And sadly, we do 2, maybe 3 vacant buildings rotations across the city from April to September. If you think about cutting your yard every 8 weeks, that's essentially our resource capability. And none of us in this room mow our grass every 8 weeks, otherwise it'd be horrific.
And we would get a letter from Forestry?
You would, yes.
And Bill.
No, because they don't have enough to cut it now, but, if you don't mind, if you have questions, if you don't mind, we can just ask questions as we go. Is that a problem with you?
You're the chairman.
But you're the senior person here, is that a problem with you?
No.
So if any of you all have questions, you just let me know, we can ask as we go, so.
Sure.
we can Okay, so, and I have one other question, so the people who are doing the grass cutting, that is the full-time and the seasonal together?
Yes, we have 20, how many utility workers do you have, Alan, permanent?
25.
So we have
26, sorry.
26 utility workers that work year-round, and you add those to the 85 to 90 seasonal we hire. And as Rick and Linda may allude to later, we have a very difficult time even filling those 85 to 90, and that blows me away. We can't even get fully staffed in the year.
So the 85 to 90 seasonal that you have, do they do everything, or are they just for grass cutting?
They're just grass cutting.
So do you have any other seasonal workers that help in other
We
departments?
bring on 10 laborers, or now utility workers, to plant trees from typically the first frost around Thanksgiving. Sometimes we'll start them in October, and they plant trees until it basically gets warm, which is late April. We don't want to go into May. So we do have 10 people, 3 crews of 3 and an extra, planting 15 trees a day per crew. So about 2,700 to 3,000 trees we plant a year on your city streets.
Okay.
It's totally separate. Totally separate. But to answer your question, the 85 to 90 are either on an ag tractor or they're cutting grass with a weed eater.
And so, so when you're laying people off, you're bringing other people in to plant the trees?
Yes, or personnel has been kind enough, if they don't exceed their number of hours in a year to kind of hurt their status, some of those people will take a month off or what have you, and they're seasoned, and they'll come back to plant trees. That's ideal, that we don't have to retrain everybody every year. So we just cannot exceed a certain hour limit of hours worked in a year. Otherwise, they're violating their status, if you will, for lack of a better way to say it.
I understand, that's the status that I disagree with. You're coming right to what I say, okay? And that's what I want to bring it back to Ms. Thomas. So what he's saying is that we got all this work that needs to be done, but in order to walk up to the line which says that you are seasonal and not full-time and get benefits, we're kind of playing a game of letting them be off and then come back. Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, I think they let them off on a leave, and then
I understand.
then they return them.
But if they're close to the amount of hours that they can work before we would have to make them full-time, is there a line in the sand of when you?
I don't think there is. I think we have to watch it because the law says if you work them 30 hours a week, you've got to pay health insurance.
Okay,
And that's $7,800
Yeah.
per person.
okay.
So, and we watch it because we don't want appointing authorities working employees part-time and not paying them the benefits. and them working full-time, that's not right. I'm sorry, that's not right.
Well, it also exposes the city to
Yes.
potential legal liability for not paying
Huge.
benefits to people who are essentially full-time employees.
You know, because if they're working full-time, they should be getting vacation, sick leave, health insurance, the whole, and pension. And they shouldn't be working them full-time if they're not gonna pay them for full-time, you know.
But isn't our whole thing in hiring employees is to hire full-time employees and give them benefits? Isn't that one of our goals as being civil servants?
I think it would all depend on how you budget them. If they budget per performance money, then we give them per performance people.
I
And we
understand.
say you can't work them full-time.
But
This
we're
is
not
the
getting the jobs
criteria.
done if we're doing per
Well, then they
performance.
need to get more people,
So they could get more per performance
or
people?
more full-time.
If you, I had a colleague tell me recently, and I'm not shining an apple on our chest in terms of a collective department. He said, I see the work your folks do. I think they do amazing work with their hands tied behind their back with no equipment or unsuitable equipment. He said, if you just doubled forestry's April through September, instead of keep, like you said, Alderwoman, earlier, you said that here come the properties every year keep rising. Our budgets remain static for at least a decade, made about 1.2 million in those 6 months. You can't keep using the same exact budget when you have the voluminous workload keeps going up and up. So that person said, if you just gave forestry, if you doubled forestry's output, a resource output, can you imagine what this city would look like? But then again, it goes back to, if you double us, we need to get the folks too.
Need to get the people.
Good.
So I had heard, I don't know, maybe 2 years ago or so, that we were looking into the possibility of planting a different kind of grass that could only grow like so high that wouldn't allow for that.
That would be, Alan has a horticultural background. I don't want to put you on the spot, we're both arborists,
Okay.
Alderwoman. Alan, you could touch on, that would be a colossal effort planting that on
Well, I guess
city property.
The trick, you hear a lot of this buffalo grass, and buffalo grass grows on glades. So a glade is, a real rocky area where there's no competition. So the trouble with St. Louis, you let everything grows in your yard, with honeysuckle, poison ivy, and it's a lot of this competition against these turfs that are supposed to choke out this grass and grow at one level, and it just doesn't happen for our climate here.
Okay.
We've got too many other weeds that grow up. You see the Johnson grass, which is really horrible now that we always have, that people calling you guys haven't touched our yard this year, and that Johnson grass can grow a foot a week, and so it's 6 feet. It's 6 feet tall, and that would it's tall as me, and you're like, yep, that kind of makes sense because we haven't been there in 6 to 7 weeks. So we've been there this year. It just explodes. Yes.
So also, do you have a follow-up? Go ahead. Well, and also, we could only do that in our public places because
Correct.
your other stock, it changes depending on how much LRA property is static or how much we sell. So we wouldn't be trying to do it with LRA property that we're selling or getting rid of because then somebody else that would just be a waste of energy and money, right? Is that correct?
That's correct, and forestry adds and omits properties every day in their billing system. This went from LRA to private, okay? The private owner now gets a letter where LRA, we've been cutting it for years, and they didn't. So now they're added as private. Or somebody says, I've gotten the letters for years from Sonetta Wright at LRA. Hey, Greg, add these 116 properties to your cutting list now. They've all been private, lost in a tax sale, or didn't go through the tax sale with a private owner, and we inherit 116 more properties. So we change them all to LRA in our billing, and it's always in the state of flux, like you said.
Okay.
But we don't care if it's private or city, we're still responsible for either one.
And how much LRA property do you have right now?
I think maybe 40 to 50%, 45% of our overall workload is LRA. We have a list right here, I asked Vicki to
Yeah,
prepare.
right.
That's a staggering file I ask for about every 2 weeks. Well, you can let her
Can
know
you
right
share
there.
that with us?
Yeah, right now we stand over a little over 10,000 combined vacant lots, vacant buildings for LRA.
Um,
About 10,260 something.
When she wants to, can we get a copy of that made?
Sure,
She's gonna
that's
make a copy.
straight from our
Okay, and she'll give that
archaic
to
billing system, but
everybody
it
who
still
wants one.
works.
Does the mayor's office want one? So you tell Ty Walterman, we're coming for him.
Since we're in the LRA business, do we still charge LRA?
We bill LRA between $2 million and $2.5 million a year. Years ago, somebody asked me, why are you billing LRA? And I said, you're not worth yourself if you can't show metrics. So if you say, yeah, we cut all the LRA, how much, Greg? Well, I don't know. That's not an answer. The answer is we bill them every day, just like you'd bill Joe Citizen. And that way, and I send Alan sends them now. I send Otis Williams a letter every year. Here's how much grass cutting we did on your properties, bill-wise, and here's how much debris removal we do. Over 2 million, 2.5. We get 1.2 million a year in budgeting for grass cutting, and I believe 545 of that comes from LRA directly to the comptroller.
545,000?
Correct. It's
And you
not-
bill 2 to 2.5?
That's what spits out, for lack of a better
And
way,
you don't
out of our
get the 5.
billing division.
And you don't.
Wait. Let me be the question. Okay, that's my question.
Of the 1.2 million we get, wherever it comes from, 545 is from LRA. It's not in addition to the 1.2, it's included in the 1.2.
Oh. Okay, and does LRA also buy, I heard a rumor that they buy some of your equipment?
Yes. So 4 or 5 years ago, I said, you know what? It's a pittance what we're gonna ask them, but I called Otis, I said, you know, it'd be great if you, we're not getting equipment, we're on the low end of the totem pole. Can I throw $20,000 to $25,000 worth of needs at you? I've never asked, the worst you say is no. He goes, sure. And I said, well, I should have asked 10 years ago. He goes, yeah, give me a list, give me 3 bids for each item you want. We bought zero-turn tractors, we bought chainsaws, we bought a couple specialty grass cutting things over the years, and they typically they acquiesce and say, yeah, well, give us a list of $20,000 and we'll buy it for you, and they do. It's not a lot, but it's certainly better than nothing.
Can she go back over now that it's in front of us? You were going over your list.
Oh, well,
Okay.
it's broken down into total lots and total buildings, and then it's separated by private and public, public meaning LRA. So the total lots and this is done by an annual survey that our inspectors and foremen do every year of every property that we have on rotation. So in essence, it's a little over 22,000 total vacant lots and vacant buildings we have in the city. And then it's broken down further by what's privately owned versus what's owned by the city, or i.e. the LRA.
And it changes daily, as
And
I
it
said earlier.
changes daily.
If you print that 2 weeks from now, you're gonna, and I misquoted myself. It used to be 75 million in square footage on vacant lots. It's 57, so I might.
Okay.
It's,
Yeah.
it is what it is, whether I
And then
transpose
also
or
in
not.
addition, you can see on the left-hand side, it lists by ward. So Honorable Tyus, in your ward, you have a total of 420 lots, 734 vacant buildings.
That makes me very mad, because when it used to be the 20th ward, we didn't have that. So let's move on. I'm having a flashback.
And then on to your far right, it breaks it down that of the 420, 324 LRA, and then 217 are LRA out of the 734.
Okay.
And as the director says, this changes every day.
Go ahead.
So the vacant lots is LRA's property?
They're both,
Both.
private and city.
On the far end,
It'll
it breaks
break.
it down.
Okay, because I'm reading this, the far left as you look at it, total vacant lots.
Yeah.
So I have 13.
That's what we show, and we always ask folks, if you see something you don't like and we're wrong, correct us, but that's what shows now.
That's probably about right.
And we do these inspections when our work order subsides some in the fall, and we send we have 3 public nuisance inspectors, and they go ward by ward with the sheets and say, no, this is vacant, or this is occupied now, change it to occupied. And we clean it up before we send out the
Right.
ordinance letters in March to all vacant property owners.
So can we kind of go back to the seasonal people and the vacancies that we have? I know you're shorting trim crews. You know, I
Major.
know that. So, because I stopped and talked to them the one day, I talked to a lady supervisor that says normally we have 11 people on our crew, and they only had 4 people. So I know they're short there, so I guess my question is, what do you think the biggest problem is why we can't fill these jobs?
Well, it may be commentary to some, but I've been called over the years, Alan has too, tree trimmer is one of the most dangerous jobs in the country, and I'm using this as an example. These folks make about $30,000 a year. They're one pay grade above somebody, no disrespect to people cutting grass, they're one pay period, 5% I guess, above a utility worker. We have people call us over the years, hey, I'll be a tree trimmer, benefits with the city? Yeah. Do you have to live in the city? Yeah, no thanks. So I hate to say that, but if the residency and there's two sides. People believe in getting rid of it, trying to, and people say, no, we should not. We hear it a lot. People would come to the city and work for that. We also feel tree trimmers are underpaid. We've worked with personnel to do a tree trimmer trainee we established a couple years ago. Now it's out. We just need bodies. We need somebody that can blow the brush, and we can get our more experienced folks in the bucket, because a guy in a bucket should be making more than the guy just throwing stuff in a chipper. So we have 26 trimmers in the city, Alderman. 2 weeks ago, we had 15 on staff. You have 85,000 street trees and 30,000 park trees, and you have 15 people to do it. That's why we're feeling the heat this summer from aldermen saying, I've had work orders in for a while, and Alan's just goes home at night, I'm sure, with migraines, because you can't do the job.
Right. And you know, and I'm bad for that. I mean,
No, you understandably.
I've raised HE hockey sticks, but you know, we get the heat from the people. We get it. You're my alderman. I can't believe it. I've called this in 4 years ago, and I tell them, well, we're sharp people. I'm sure we'll get to it somewhere, but we have a lot of trees that really need to be trimmed because they're dangerously falling. Hunks of it off there, this, that, and everything else. And I get it. I mean, I remember years ago we used to do rotations in wards.
Proactively, we do it.
Exactly, and then, you'd get pulled off if there was a storm came,
Sure.
so you clean, then you'd go back and finish out. And we've just not been able to do that for the last few years. So, I mean, it's a tough deal, but when I was an investigator with the city, I think over 200 and some people lost their job when I got done with. But, I mean, I think we're at a point, and I really do personally, and we're not gonna all agree, but residency years ago was a thing of political stuff when you got these patronage offices, so you could live in that ward and vote for that person. I just think, firefighters can move after 7 years now. They went through the state. The police before could move after 7 years. In my ward, I just don't think personally there'd be this massive flight or takeout, because I think they thought that with the police years ago. I have over 130 police that live in my ward. I probably have 400 city employees, and I still got some firemen in there. And I get it, that some people want to send their kids to Catholic schools. We've closed a lot of them up. I had a lot of people move by my ward with Immaculate Heart closed up. And the next closest one is St. Mark's. But, I don't know what the answer is. I'm just hoping we can come to some resolution and figure it out. We need bodies. We need to figure out how to make the pay more competitive, and just things like that, so.
We meet with Director
wait a
Frank.
minute, excuse me.
Thank you. I've got a couple thoughts, and Greg's been good about this, but when I came on board, we used to have the career seasonals, and many of the appointing authorities would not necessarily grant them permanent status. So you had a group of people that would work, for 8 months, and then didn't necessarily know if they were going to be hired back. They wouldn't know if, they, had that kind of continuity of employment, and Greg was one of the first ones to start giving those career seasonal people status. So at least they knew they were going to come back. my suggestion, first of all, would be, in terms of the budgeting process, if you have enough work for a certain amount of people, those people should go to full-time, because then you can at least advertise, they know they've got continuity. It's not like an electrician who's out in the street and knows that 3 months they're gonna be out of work and have to be, we have less problems then with problems with harassment, with EEO complaints, et cetera. Greg has us come in and do training because these people aren't having to get used to our culture every year. And I think that makes it more competitive. Number two, and I've talked to Alderwoman Tyus and Linda, is we haven't had a pay study, a real honest pay study, since 1999 or 2000. And I'm prepared to move forward. And if it's ugly, it's ugly. But you're right, we need to know, at least start by knowing where we should be. We got no raises, and I talked to Alderman Conway, Chief of Staff Conway yesterday. We've had no pay raises 2004, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then pay raises now that don't even keep pace with inflation. The inflation, the COLA just came out as 2.8%. So even if we had, these kinds of able-bodied people, tree trimmers, last time I checked, one of the top 3 most dangerous professions in the country. So I do think that we could get more bodies in if we had these full-time positions, instead of them not really knowing, their per performance and knowing that they're just going to get these hourly rates. So that's the other thing that, I'm looking at. But I think that pay study, which we've already got an RFP model to look at, we need to know where we're at and then start pushing for that. And then the Alderman has to assist us in making sure that we get these monies to these departments. I'm already meeting, we've got a meeting on tree trimmers coming up, I think in a week or 2. We've got meetings about the water maintenance series, But what Linda and I have had to do is patchwork stuff, Band-Aid stuff. And I think we need to do an honest appraisal of what our staffing needs are. I've said this about the HEO2s. We've cut. They've allowed these positions to go down, and I've said it before, from 82 to 67.
69.
So we've had, while we haven't had the equipment, we've also seen a reduction in a cut in the number of actual positions, while the work's gone up. So we have to look at these things holistically. We've got several approaches, but I think if we could get some of those people on full-time, and I'm sure there would be work for these people, planting trees throughout the winter, et cetera. Maybe we start more modestly, but get those built into the budget and not allow those things to be slashed out.
And instead of doing seasonal, if we still got work, maybe continue to have work throughout.
Yes.
As long as possible. I mean, because sometimes it stays warm enough, I think, in the city. You can work November. We've cut grass at my house in December before because we have a bluegrass and we needed to be cut. So
It could be 70 degrees in December here.
exactly. So
right.
there's still some things that could be done. Just one other thing. Can you speak to me about waivers? Because whenever, I'm one of the people that's anti-move out of the city. And so I never understand why people, when they talk about we can't fill positions, couldn't we do waivers if we
I am
cannot?
considering right now for police officers, we're down, the number's uncertain,
96.
I think 96, but also with grant funded positions, we can do waivers. As long as we don't ever reach a full staffing level,
Right.
we don't have a problem. I spoke to the Civil Service Commission today, and I've spoken to the mayor's office, and they're requesting that, and Judge Jimmy Edwards, that we consider waivers for police officers, because we just can't attract them. Nobody can attract them. So what we can do, and Linda devised a system, is we can announce it as a waiver as possible, and on December 1st of every year, we will submit to the Civil Service Commission a list of names for people who for 1 year can have a residency waiver, and then I report that to the Board of Aldermen.
I was going to say, we file it with our clerk.
Yes.
Which we don't have a clerk, so we have a staffing
So we can
issue.
do that, ma'am, and I think that's an excellent idea, and again, the mayor asked the chief of staff for me to consider that, and I spoke to Jimmy late last night, and, we're all forward with that. Please.
Even though I haven't talked to my boss yet, I would recommend that for tree trimmer.
That's what I was that was my whole point, when I said speak to waivers. People keep doing that, and I know, so we have so many new people, so for us, senior people, because we're not old, I do know that waivers were used in various positions over the years, and they do file it with our clerk, if we had a clerk.
Yes.
Okay, we're gonna have to use personnel so we can hire a clerk in the Board of Aldermen, but, all right, there was somebody else.
Yeah, just a
Alderwoman Green.
couple of quick questions. One, so the frustration I hear from constituents a lot is, I think if I was able to go to them and say, we're short-staffed, like, this is the reason, they would be they're okay. What gets them frustrated is when they put something into CSB and it says that it's completed, and then,
Speak to that.
and then it never, and then, you know, they're standing there saying, this is not completed, and I put it in again, and then 2 weeks later it says it's completed again. And can you speak to that and how we can fix that?
How timely that you asked that.
Can I ask
Yeah.
that,
Go ahead.
because this became an issue, and Alderwoman Tyus was here, where we learned, much to our chagrin, that the way that Citizen Service Bureau was closing out these cases, or where they say closed, it should just be open with an online, real-time status, which was supposed to be updated by the GPS system. I know that's what Cindy Reardon had intended. Instead, what's happening is they're just getting in it and saying closed. So you have no updated information, and they're not closed. And that's why we talked to the unions and said, we need GPS so that we can do real-time reporting, and we can enter in and give you continual updates, and that's not happening. So Dottie McDowell testified that she was supposed to go back and work with IT so that we can get that kind of system so that all the people can have continuous updated kind of feedback on where that's at, and the citizen doesn't have to complain 3 times, oh no, that's been closed out. Well, no, the tree's still on top of my car, you know, so that's an excellent suggestion.
Go ahead,
Alan-
and then I
Alan,
have some more to add to that.
There's been a ton of work in a very abbreviated time period, the last 3 weeks. Alan can speak to that. I'm confident to say, Alderwoman, that is very frustrating. I believe those days are over or soon to be over. Alan, will you tell them about the new column, which is very citizen and property owner friendly, of what, and Vicki can maybe expand on it.
Yeah, so there'll be a new column, what's it called, Vicki? What's the
A field. It's all about at public.
at public, so that at public, so people can read exactly what's going on. So the grass needs to be cut in a certain block, so yes, it's been reported.
Excuse me, what was the new column? Is it gonna be online? Is it gonna be on Citizen Service Bureau? What?
It'll be online, the Citizen Service Bureau, so
Okay.
the public can read it.
And mirrored in our departments.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, so then our department can type in there that, hey, inspectors, this is a private property, inspector's been sent to inspect the property. Once it's been inspected, then we send a letter of violation to the homeowner, and then they have 5 to 7 days to rectify it. If not, we'll re-inspect it, and then it'll go into crew status. So all that will be stated in that public column there. So you
And
can
when is
read
that supposed to start?
It started with Forestry. We kind of test plotted with Forestry, and that was 2 weeks.
September 10th was
Oh,
our,
it's already
our
started.
go live. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so about 2 weeks ago, and
Okay.
Right.
we're working with different departments at this time to kind of get them up and going.
The word closed should never be used unless it's in fact completed,
Confusing.
correct?
And/or it will be closed if upon inspection or upon inspection either by my inspector or field crew, no forestry violations found. And that will be at public. The whole idea is that when citizen Linda pulls up, oh, I submitted the service request for grass, or no, debris, or whatever, and you'll see the status like inspect. So you'll know it's an inspect status. When we get that inspection back, the next comment will be, if it is going to the field crew, we have certain verbiage we use, like i.e. sent to field crew to be completed on or about this date. And then we're constantly updated. Our tree is inspected. We used to say, tree needs trimming, blah, blah, blah. If it's a tree inspection for 6 months, schedule for tree trimming, 30-inch pin oak, and then you'll see on the resolution, it'll be to be completed on or about in that 6-month date. So the citizen Joe will be able to see the whole process. And,
But it should only be
That's good.
closed only if, okay,
It's
the inspector
completed.
went there, the grass was cut.
And it's done.
Complete-
Everything
yeah,
was in
complete.
compliance, so.
And even
closed.
after, like, properties on rotation, which people submit, and we determine, oh, XYZ property or North Euclid, yes, properties on rotation, it's been cut, and we'll give the dates. Next rotation to be on or about, and we'll give that date. But those will remain open as before in the past, alleged miscut. We would just close them out and say, refer to supervisor. But that's not to be anymore in our meetings, that there should be no closure, as the commissioner said. Either it's been completed or there's no forestry violation.
And if they're saying no forestry violation, will there be a date of when it was inspected? Like it said, no forestry violation?
And we'll put the date.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, per field crew or per inspector, the date. Absolutely.
As we move on, I've asked Deputy Director Tanner to work with, we've got a new ERP, a new IT system, and we'll be moving into business analytics. And one of the things that we will then be able to do is analyze efficiency for each of the different departments. I mean, that'll be a tool for you to see, how often, what is the real time, or I'm sorry, we call it cradle to grave, but since the time this original complaint was received till the time no further action was needed, and we'll be able to analyze all of our different departments that way and see where we need to improve resources, and also to make sure that there's equitable division of resources, and that's something we don't have the capability of doing easily now, but that'll be at our fingertips then.
And I have a question. So when Citizen Service Bureau, because when they were posting closing, who was actually reporting the closing? Was it the department or was Citizen Service Bureau just closing it out? What's your understanding? What happened with Forestry? If something was reported closed, how did it get closed?
We close them out.
Okay, so they would, did you actually go in and close them out?
We have to go in.
City
and
Works.
Yeah,
Right.
into the city works.
Right,
yes.
not the employees
Now,
of Citizen
you
Service.
you will see closures, because when we get the service request in, part of my lady's job is we check for duplicates. So we get a service request in, I inspect city tree, we pull up, well, there's already one out there. We will say duplicate service request, C, service request number, blah, 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 blah. Then yes, we close it. Or any duplicate we see, and ideally those should be catched at the input. And they're not, because CSB is lacking personnel too, and we get that, NSOs are lacking. But that's one of the first things we do on any service request. We're able to pull that address up and we'll see what has been submitted.
Wait a minute, what if there was a mistake? So, Greg knows that last year, they sent me a bill saying they cut my property. That does not happen, okay? And the first thing you can know that you didn't cut it, because my property is all, the guy who cuts my grass, he is very anal about cutting it and then lining it and trimming it. So all you have to do is take an aerial view to know that Forestry did not cut that. But I had 6 or 7 other people. All the people who kept their grass really nice got these letters. And he actually inspected himself. And so sometimes the wrong address gets in. So will the citizen be able then to come back if they see that it says it's been done? Is there something for them to be able to say, well, yeah, but it's not still done and there's a wrong address or something in there? Is there?
They can give us a call.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I'm saying, so they wouldn't they would call Citizen Service back and say that's incorrect. Say if you have said, if you said it's been cut,
Right.
and you've noted that it's been cut.
Right.
But
It
it wasn't cut because
Yeah.
you're looking at the yard next
Yeah.
door.
Re-inspect this because
Right.
something's not right, because
Yeah.
it's 3 feet tall.
Yes.
There needs to be a mechanism, number one, that is reopened in Citizen Service
That's
Bureau.
what I'm saying,
And
right.
I've heard conflicting things about CSB, that sometimes some of their staff close it out as soon as they send it to the department, and that's a big problem.
And that's why I was asking about
Yeah.
who was closing.
Maybe not in your case, but in certain
Right.
cases, that has happened.
Yeah, Forestry, we close.
Now, some examples I have seen in CSB, rightly so, they'll already get a service request and it's after the fact as the CSRs are double checking their work and it's like, oh darn, that was a duplicate. Yeah, we'll close it out. Or oh darn, that property was on rotation, because they have access to the billing system and
Right.
yeah, they close out a lot of ones that should not have been submitted. And yes, they show up for that property,
So both Forestry and Citizen Service Bureau can close things out, is what you're telling me.
We can close out service requests that come to Forestry.
Mhm.
We can't close out anyone else.
Right. But I'm saying they could Citizen Service Bureau close out a Forestry if they thought it was a duplicate?
Not once it's submitted to us, while it's still in their
okay.
in their pocket,
Right.
so to speak.
So if they can pull up and determine 4968 Maffett Place, that's my address, was already reported in, and so when they see that, it says no reason to.
And before
to
they
send it
hit
again.
that magic button, you
Okay.
have like I call it like a kitty, you know, as you're working on all of them, because that's how my clerks work. Before they actually open them up and change to inspect or whatever, they're double checking, so there is that opportune time, right?
Wait a minute.
If memory serves me right, when Dottie testified before the committee, when we had water in and refuse and all that, I believe she's the one who testified they could close them out, and in fact did close them out.
Yeah.
Not necessarily yours, it
Yeah,
could have been waters
it happens.
or refuse
But,
or.
right, okay, but you're saying that it's after, before they turn it into you, but once it turns into you, that doesn't happen?
It should not, I should say it should not happen.
Okay,
But, you know, it could be operator error,
okay,
we do billing,
okay.
that's how billing
Oh, I
happens.
intend to bring Dottie back here to talk to them anyway.
Because I think it's different for every department.
Yeah, it is,
I get
yeah.
the CSB complaints for the department personnel, and what I do is then I respond back and say department personnel will respond. So then she rightly can say sent to personnel, you know, personnel will respond on 11/1/18, closed.
Right.
Then that's my responsibility. She has a document in the system
Right.
that I've committed to closing it.
Right.
So as long as that is captured, but that, I think it's critical that there is a consistent methodology across departments from CSB, and I'm not sure. I
And it's
think-
it's getting to that point, I can say that.
Well, I want to say that I go in, as not as Alderwoman Tice, I go into Citizen Service Bureau on many occasions as just somebody else. And I did this is not even forestry, I did this with a building that was around the corner from a building that I own. And I turned it in to be boarded, and then I waited the proper time and went through all the stuff, but it came up closed. And so then I called Frank and said, this is not closed, and let me tell you who this person is. And so what happened is that they determined that it was too dangerous to board up. But instead of saying, we weren't able to complete this, they just put closed with,
Right.
and I'm testing that because that's what people are telling me, okay? So you're telling me that as it relates to forestry, this will no longer be a frustration, is that correct?
Perfect point. I mean,
Perfect
perfect
point.
point, because we drive out with aldermen all the time, they're like, you guys haven't touched the front yard of this home, and I'll say, okay, well, look up, this building's 30 feet tall, the there's only 10-foot section in front there, and those bricks could fall at any moment. So I cannot put any personnel into a hazardous area. But we would just put closed, or who knows what it would put, but there's where we need to say, hazardous building
Yes.
cannot cut.
Cannot
in front of
access.
this,
Right.
Cannot access. the front.
Exactly.
And we may cut 20 feet in the back, but we won't get within 20 or 30 feet.
And we do make that announcement.
So we need to be
Yeah.
more open to the public, and that's
Yeah.
what we're trying to do.
And that's what we say, due to unsafe environment, that's our key code, we say.
Just give them more information.
And that's important too with the shift in responsibility, because what we also see, and I see as director, is that there might be something that the citizens or personnel, they get really upset, and it goes to the operating department, but it's more properly addressed by me. So I think, again, you need to have that history, that chronology of what happened, where it was referred to, and then you can trace those steps. But I think it really needs to be institutionalized in their policy, how they do this.
Right,
So we're all on
exactly,
the same page.
exactly. Okay, so I want to go to something more personal with forestry, which is, I drive my ward, and when I came back, Greg was not, you were still at forestry before that. And so I drove my ward and I said, oh, this grass has not been cut. So this little iPad has about 5 years worth of history on it. And so then I start sending back to him and saying, no, it hasn't. And after a while, he's like, Alderwoman, you could just tell me, because I would just send pictures, okay? So now they're pretty good at cutting my front yards, but my backyards get skipped many a time. And so explain to me how that happens. Why is it that my front yards are getting cut and not my backyards?
I'll start off and I'll hand it to Alan. First of all, that's inexcusable. If you have a vacant property, we cut the foreman pre-trips the block, says hit this one, this one, this one, that one, this one. And it's obvious the ones that are well maintained. They cut the front and they cut the back. There's no exception, and that's when aldermen call me and alderwomen call me and say, hey Greg, the grass is high here. And I'd look it up, and we had cut it once, maybe twice, and I say, the grass, I guarantee, I know it's high. we haven't been back there. But my biggest pet peeve, I've said it in every ways and means, is blatant misses. And that's two individuals with weed eaters looking in the back going, oh my gosh, this is gonna require chainsaws, there's woody plants. It doesn't matter, they're there to cut it. Now, a big forested area in the back, if we start cutting every one of those, we'll never be cutting any grass. We'll be just using crawlers and clearing stuff out. So my point is, it's inexcusable and we need to hear about it.
No, good, completely agree. The crew, if there's a lot of debris in the back, or there's a lot of woodies that really would require a front loader to clear out, then it would be, that crew would comment and say, hey, we need to send a debris team over here and clear out this backyard. But if it's just turf and no woodies back there, it needs to be cut front and back.
So if the back is because for some reason we haven't touched it in a long time,
It becomes a jungle.
So isn't that something we could be doing in wintertime?
We do.
Because I'm looking for people to work full-time. I'm taking this full circle, people, okay? So if you can't get to that, couldn't we use a crew during the winter that would take and do that all the time and clear out so that we don't keep exacerbating that? Because if you don't cut it this year, you don't cut it, then it's a self-evolving backyard that becomes out of hand, okay? So shouldn't at least all our yards be, especially backyards, because the front yards get cut, but at some point during the year, shouldn't we have somebody out there with the trucks and the things getting it cleaned up?
And I've told folks for years, this is a fall-winter project. We'll send a crawler or a front loader in there. We'll load the stuff out. We have so many of these, as you alluded to earlier. You drive down the alley, and I don't even want to look on each side with the overgrowth of vegetation, and then a lot you can't even see. That is exactly what we should be doing in the winter and fall, and that's what we've done before, but not to the level we need to. Because our goal, I'll risk us getting sued, taking out a couple dilapidated fences between properties. I don't think anybody ever really calls us, because they're probably thankful we took it down. But our goal is to if these are two properties and they're nasty in the back and they'd take us forever with two people with string trimmers, our goal is to clear and drop that and then turn it into an easy service, maybe even a tractor back there instead of this stuff. So yes, we do that in the fall, winter, and do we have enough people to do it? No. That's a great point. It's a great operational issue that we need to do.
I just want to
Wait,
comment.
before that,
Oh, I'm sorry.
did you have something to say, Mr. Al?
No, I agree with Greg.
Okay.
And those fences,
You can disagree if you want to.
it's not just the alleyways, you see it on those fence lines. And the fence this year is 3 feet wide, 5 feet wide, it just gets bigger and bigger.
Okay.
That's kind of what I wanted to talk about in terms of working smarter. It may not be that much more expensive to convert some of these positions, because under the ACA, we have to pay those people the benefits, the health benefits anyway. And we have 300 career seasonal employees that we are paying health benefits for. So outside of just the fairly modest rate of pay, all we're going to have to do is allow those people to participate, in the pension system, and that's only about 12% of their salary. So it really does make sense to me. I went through the same thing with Dottie, saying she came over and met with Linda and me, and she wanted more staff for her intensive times, because she doesn't have time to train people. And I said, wait here, let's look and see what you've got. You have ebbs and flows, and during the winter period of time, you have less complaints, you have less flow. We looked at that. That's when you need to be doing the training, the one-on-one training with your extra staff, and it made sense to her. That's the same type of thing that I'm thinking is like conversion of these 300 career seasonal people into full-time, and then you hit those winter projects on a maintenance level, and it's not going to be that much more expensive, because we're already paying for their health insurance benefits.
And I want to say that if I could tell people that, then I wouldn't be bothering you. Because I got a list right now of backyards that are just out of control. And I know you're trying to just cut that grass right now.
Right.
But if we knew that we were going to have people coming in for the winter and get that cleaned up, then I think we could address that issue and stop it growing to be a bigger issue, okay? Because if you get it, then next year when you start cutting grass, that won't be a problem if you spend all winter cleaning that out.
Can you imagine commentary, can you imagine the development potential when developers are driving down an alley and going, but then they see a cleared out area, it's just ripe for development, in my opinion. You see all this cleared out thing that you didn't, and maybe a football field stretch, and you're like, wow, I'm interested in this block, my personal opinion.
Right. Okay. Anybody else have any questions? Oh, you know, okay, now, the next, I have another question about, so, trimmers, which is separated out from cutting grass. We're about to get our own men to start doing trimming, because we're very frustrated in the first ward, because the trimmers sometimes don't come back. And, you know, they cut the grass, but then the tree lines are this tall and so who's supposed to follow up with making sure the trimmers come back, and how does that work? And why is it separated?
So you're talking about the trimmers, not tree trimmers, but the trimmers on tree
What do
line?
you call those? Yes, the
Yeah,
trimmers, once you
tree
got
line.
grass, then they have another set of people. I thought they
So
called
we
them
have a
trimmers.
hand crew come
Hand
through. So
crew.
we just had that, the tractor drivers where they're cutting mini tractors and they're moving on.
Right.
And then you have your hand crew coming up behind.
And why are they separated?
Because the tractor guy, he can hit 2 or 3 blocks in, you know, an hour, and he's moving on. And then you have your hand crews, we just want him to keep moving
Right.
and keep cutting. Cut
Okay.
as much property as you can. And then we have the separate guys that come with weed eaters, they're gonna be much slower. And they're up back in the back, coming behind them, pruning up any kind of leftover grass.
Do you have somebody, a supervisor, something to make sure?
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't understand why they miss it, and why I'm calling in saying, hey, you missed this, and this. So if you have a supervisor, you know where the guy used the tractor.
Correct.
What happens that then they don't come back
So
to trim up?
they should, there is a supervisor checking up on all that. And the only time that maybe they wouldn't cut along the tree lawn is if there's cars lined up along there.
That's not it.
And that would be the only.
As a follow-up, one of the scorn of a lot of aldermen for years is you got this ag tractor, it does 25 to 30 lots in a day. They 15, 20 minutes, they're done. They're gone. You have all these lots cut, and you have a tree lawn by the street like this, and they're going, how dumb does that look? Our answer was, we're just pulling people from vacant building crews to follow up and do it, so we're not making any progress. And so an alderman said to me, whoever it was years ago, all right, throw me a figure of what it takes to have these tree lawns, light poles, fence, hydrants, which are my pet peeve, a hydrant covered in weeds, it's ridiculous. Those issues, hydrant, poles, tree lawns, what's it take? That afternoon, I emailed them back, said, give me $250,000. I broke it down by employees, equipment. That year, we got $225,000 extra, and we saw a lot of those problems solved. But
Okay.
to say I can't have a guy on an ag tractor get down with a lot, hop off with a weed eater. We need him moving. We cannot do that. So when you're doing it, what you want and what we need to do, and it's unacceptable not to, is we need those folks to be following up so you have a complete product. You don't have a vacant lot cut and a ridiculously high tree lawn where people park their car and go, how dumb is the city? That's what that one year, it was terrific. Maybe it was 2 years we got those extra funds. It was great, because we had those crews just dedicated to that service.
So-
I think it was 225 we got that year extra, but that's an anomaly.
Okay.
200,000, 225, whatever, close enough.
And, go ahead. No,
Greg, just to follow up, and I got a question. So, my 2 cemeteries, Gatewood over there on Martinsburg, this and that, which
Yes.
the city's been taking care of for years since my friend Solomon Rooks absconded with the money. So, and I know we got enough cutting going on, but, the trees need attention, the
Yep.
grass and cleaned up. And I know it's hard, and they do the best they can, but I do want to say this, and I think they do, and they do a pretty good job. But I would like, maybe in the winter time or later in the fall, if they're ever free, if they could go both cemeteries, because there's some seriously hanging trees now. I've had citizens that's called me and says, hey, my grandma's there, this tree, would you have a problem if we kind of took something and trimmed it down? I said, I don't have a problem.
Sure, I
If you
wouldn't
want
either
to
if
do
there's
that, so, but it's really got some bad trees in it. And they keep up with it pretty good, though. I'll give them that with the grass, so.
I get about, no exaggeration, only about 2 complaints a year. Typically, it's the same
Yeah.
couple. And we try to make sure, with all due respect to the folks that are there, holidays,
Yeah.
Veterans Day, Mother's Day, Father's Day, we make sure that place is cut.
Yeah.
We inherited those 32 acres of cutting, and it's extremely labor intensive to be
Yeah.
weed eating around every headstone, and we inherited it. When there's LRA, when there's tree problems, I have sent crews in there to do the real
Yeah.
hazards, but I've also called LRA and said, you have a tree crew, we need you to help out. This is your property, and we inherited it. If we could give up that cemetery, and when I first started in forestry for 10 years, we had a regimented discipline program where folks came up from the prison. They had an armed guard standing there with a guy, standing next to a van. That cemetery was done by those folks, kept forestry on our task, and they, due to budget cuts, they disbanded. That was tremendous. They would spend all day up there working off their sentence, and that went away. I begged for that for years.
And see, I feel so, if we have people sitting at MSI that just owe fines, or because obviously they don't have the money to pay, why not let them come out and do community service? I mean, and they
Zero
can get
cost
out of
labor,
there.
I've been begging for it.
Yeah,
Everybody says
and
every
they
year.
get out of there. There's no use in sitting in there when you don't have the money. Let's be realistic. Let them come out and just do some community service and they're done with it.
We welcome it with open arms, Alderman.
I have something for Alderman Arnowitz, because one of my frustrations, I don't have a say in this, I don't sit on Ways and Means, obviously, but we did this management span of control way back in 2006, and I sent it back to the mayor's office, to Todd, and he understood. We need to increase the span of control of our managers. That's why the IPMA came in and did the study, and we were only one, for every manager, we only had 5 employees. I took every one of those recommendations and immediately got rid of 3 managers and improved efficiency, and I just eliminated another one. We picked up, Brian is now supervising 2 sections. There are many opportunities while we're going through this big state audit, which is costing us millions of dollars. We also need to look back at 2006. What did you do? Some of the things have changed, but some of them haven't. I accepted every one of those recommendations and it worked. We still are top heavy. And if you look at the St. Louis County Police and their white shirts versus what ours are, and Linda can talk about this, she's reviewing the budget. It's gone up.
Yes.
We even have more.
Yes.
I just got rid of, involuntarily, but I just reduced the fire chief from having 5 deputies, which I fought in the beginning, down to 4. And I'm more than willing to do that again. But I think the board really needs to look at these departments and their span of control and what these people are doing, because we've got too many chiefs. And if I can do it in my department of 60 and eliminate 4 management positions based on that study, and I've sent that back over, to Todd and asked him to distribute that and to challenge each of the directors at cabinet, which I brought up, to look at their department and to say, are there positions that, even through attrition, so that we can get more labor. That's just my flag waving, because I've seen it.
And Director, how many times have I told you my personal
I know.
opinion of the police department?
And we went up
When
this year.
we had
They just increased their
1,800
sergeant.
policemen, you had a sergeant for about every 7 policemen or 8 policemen. You have now a sergeant for every 3 policemen.
3, is it now? I thought it was 4.
So, well, it may be 4.
With the
but
vacancies, I think you're right, and they just
And
this year
here,
moved it up, Alderman.
Go by the population in the city. I think all promotions should be frozen.
I do too.
We need to reduce white shirts in this city. We do not need, 5 or 6 majors in this city. We
Or a
don't,
captain driving someone around, a
right.
captain?
We don't need 4 lieutenant colonels in this city. Captains can step up and do what majors do. Lieutenants can step up and do what captains do. And I guess we need to do it through attrition, but we need to freeze promotions for the next 6 or 7 years.
Even, Alderman, in response to that, during our negotiations several years ago with the SLPOA, and I've had an agreement with them, wasn't easy, but I've gotten it with Rorta. And even he said, before he got the sergeants, that there should be their board said there should be a 3-year freeze. And instead, I talked to Jimmy last night, and all of a sudden, we've got more sergeants than we had
just added
before.
4.
Just added.
And that's what I'm saying, and, I know it, I say, hey, look, these white shirts aren't on the streets patrolling, and here's the... Okay. Anyway, go back, that's something we we need to work on in the future.
We're gonna go to Terry Kennedy's. Okay, I have a suggestion, because I already did it, you paid for it, about that.
I see none.
Right. I want to go back to something that Greg said about having people work from the workhouse. Julius Connor has for years been in charge of a program that neighborhoods can get the people from, that's working their sentence down, and they can put people in charge of, and they can come and clean alleys and things. And it's Julius Connor of the 6th District. And I don't understand why that couldn't also go to the city. Because I can get my neighbors, and we can bring people out, and we've done it in our neighborhood for the last 5 years that I've been back here. And we have people come out, and we give them sodas and hot dogs and things, and they help the neighbors clean alleys and things like that. So I don't see why, in a large scale, we couldn't do that with the city. And I can, I'll email you his contact
Sure.
things, and maybe we talk to Hayden, and I'll talk to Judge Edwards, because I don't see why we can't do that all the time, okay?
Right.
As an attorney, you would know, I wouldn't, but could you do that even for like community, or city courts for, charges or violations?
I have argued that for years with the original Congressman Clay, and he would say, Sharon, because, some very liberal people are opposed to that. I'm liberal, except for that I am not liberal that I don't think anybody is too good to pick up paper. I pick up paper every day. I pick up paper in my alley, on my street. I have the bus stop by me. So I don't think that harms people, especially rather than giving them exorbitant bails, or if they don't have the money to pay these fines. I much prefer for them to do work. But I will say there's some people don't like it. Me personally, I think it's a great idea. I don't have a problem with anybody doing work. I have a law degree, and I will clean toilets if I need to. If I had to clean toilets to earn a living, to eat, that's what I would do. So that's my personal opinion. I don't think it's unlawful, but I do think that some people are uncomfortable with
I
it.
see.
Okay.
Right. Well, yes, the reason why, and there's no special thing with Alderman Arnowitz's cemetery. The reason why I always threw out the cemetery is, it's not our greatest need, but if you have a program like that, it's a safe, controlled environment with supervision, instead of people all over blocks and streets where it gets very chaotic. One spot, and somebody can say, what's so special about the cemetery? You put them there, like we used to have, and that frees up 6 to 8 forestry workers to go elsewhere.
But I'll tell you, the ones that work with us, we've never had any problem. They work in the alleys. And we would have like 1 or 2 people that supervise them. They do their work. These are not, hardened criminals. They haven't done anything really, horrible.
Right.
Maybe a drug charge or something like that. They come and do the work, and it works. So I don't see why that couldn't work for the city too.
Sure.
And then reduce their fines, reduce their time. We got some people working. Now, again, I know the optics looks like, if you watch TV with the work crews and stuff like that, I'm not talking about that optic,
Right.
okay? But we would have to do it the right way.
We could, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
We could even use those people, if they get some practical work experience, we could work with Dr. Alice Prince, and then those people could get qualifying experience. There's nothing with ban the box. If you could cut grass, you can cut grass. And we could then cycle them into our workforce.
Excellent idea, exactly.
We've gotten a few people from Dr. Prince, a couple people this summer, a couple in parks, I think maybe just parks.
Of course, you do more.
Forestry.
We're always looking, we'll
We have a couple
welcome them too.
Yep.
Now I have a question. Besides other things we talked about, I've heard that you guys get these special projects. So you may not want to answer this. And that some of the problem we have is that you get pulled off of what you're supposed to be doing to maybe doing things that are not on the books. So I want to know, are there special projects? And I never knew about the cemetery until now. I know, is that
It's not a
LRA
special
owned?
project.
Okay, but is that LRA owned?
Yes.
Okay, but are there other things? Do you do private work? And if you do you get paid for it? That's what my question is.
If they do, they'd lose their job tomorrow.
Okay.
I can testify to that.
I'm putting it on the table,
If I
okay?
hear that, we investigate it immediately. Years ago, we had one of our employees was sitting at a property in his truck, taking 25, 50 bucks from a citizen to allow them to dump at this site right near our roving district debris operation. Found out about it, police called, ended up dismissing the individual. But that's a crime.
So I'm not just saying for like that, okay? I'm saying, let's just say I owned a big cemetery and I couldn't get it cut. Could I hire city workers and pay them to do that?
No.
Because Oh, and let me tell you why. So
No.
if I didn't do it and you sent me a bill, you still would go do it and I would have to pay.
Perfect example to answer that question. I've had an elderly woman or two, or elderly man over the years saying, hey, Forestry may be able to, with your rates, maybe cheaper than what I can pay somebody. Can I just have you folks cut? And I said, we don't set up
Right.
formal relationships with thousands and thousands. What we do is, if your property's in violation, when we're in that ward, we're gonna cut it. But no, I'm not gonna have June Smith have an agreement with Allen to cut. No, that does not happen.
Okay.
Where I thought you were going with specials, Alderwoman, was, yes, we have hot, like if you call me about a real hot issue with a tree, like a broken hanger or something, I'm not gonna say, hey, all our crews are somewhere else right now. I would, if it's hazard enough, we're gonna pull them off and solve your problem. So that's what not nearly a special,
Okay.
but things come up. We try to limit those, because as soon as we get pulled off rotation, you're all over the place. But no, pay for hire, or work for pay, no way.
Okay.
I've had too many of those for my taste years ago.
I also hear a lot from Southside aldermen about their trees. I have a lot of trees in North St. Louis, but I'm the exception, okay? So I hear a lot about trees not getting trimmed and cars being damaged. So what is the process? If it really is something dangerous, is there something extra they should be doing to let you know that this needs to be done immediately?
What they call Citizen Service Bureau, our arborist checks it out, and if it has that high a hazard rating, we'll send a crew within a day or the same day to do it, yes.
So our superintendent, he's in charge of kind of coordinate those crews, so he's working from the most hazardous tree in the city
Okay.
down.
Okay.
And I know everybody's tree in front of their home is the most hazardous one. There's dead limbs here and there. Is it as hazardous as the one across town that's completely dead, maybe hanging over an intersection or
Okay.
something? So he has to prioritize all that.
And our folks have the expertise in training. They're certified with the International Society of Arboriculture, and we have confidence in their ability of whether to say, I know this person calls every week, but this is not a hazard. Sometimes you just eventually just trim the tree, because they'll keep calling, but you want to placate them, but if you did that every day, I mean, if they're calling the mayor every day, or whoever, eventually you're gonna say, you know what, it's gonna take us 45 minutes, let's just trim it. But you can't make a practice
Like
of
being
it.
married.
Right. You can't make a practice of that.
Okay, now, okay, so what about ADA? So I sent a request, and I have a specific spot right at Coke Brilliant and Academy where a tree it hangs over, and I have a lady in a wheelchair, okay? It's right at the corner of Academy, and I sent it, and it may have already been trimmed. Because every time I get a chance, I will drive one street and just note the things.
Right.
So do we have some, and you don't have to write it down now, because I turned it in. Do we have some responsibility under ADA about clearance and trees too?
Absolutely.
Okay.
We should never have a parking space compromised in any way and obstructing somebody from being, they've gone to the street division to get that, I assume, a disabled placard. And no, we should be alerted to those immediately. They should not have to be inconvenienced.
But what about, this is not a parking space, but it's her ability to go down that sidewalk.
Same thing,
Okay.
same
'Cause,
thing.
okay, so so we are under
Thanks, Alderman.
ADA?
Even if it's a hazardous shrub, or a shrub in the middle of the sidewalk and it's a private owner, we're gonna send them violations. Say,
And
trim
we'll
your-
cut it.
Trim your shrub, if not, we're coming.
You cannot block any right-of-way, street, alley, or sidewalk.
Okay. Do you have any suggestions for us how we could help you improve forestry? What we need to do as members of the Board of Aldermen is, you told us already that we could get you more money, okay? What would you need as far as employees? What would make forestry work the way it's supposed to? And let me stop for a minute and say, am I correct that you only can have, 6 feet, 7 inches tall, right?
That's correct in the
Grass,
ordinance.
okay.
And it exceeds that
Right.
all over the city.
Okay, so if you only can have 7-inch grass, and then a lot of this LRA property, you're only able to cut grass, and then only in special requests do you cut the bushes and stuff away from the houses. So even in the front, I have LRA houses, the bushes are now covering the houses. What kind of staff would you need to really clean this city up?
I'd say I've said for years, if literally, it sounds very greedy, but if you doubled our staff. in
And
the
what's your
summer,
staff now?
80 to 85 people. If you got us up near 200 people, and we could in fact get the people, as Rick and Linda know, 200, we'd be cutting, I mean, we'd be doing these buildings at least 4 times a summer. That's every 6 weeks. That's pretty darn good. It's better than every 10 to 12 weeks. So you double our utility worker potential, and right now we're doing 6 vacant lot rotations a year. We could be going through 12 times every 2 weeks, and it could be impactful. And the other thing, to answer your question, I love this waiver of tree trimmers idea. Rick probably gets worn out, and Linda does, of us emailing them constantly for years saying, what do you got for us, you know? And a lot of times the answer is, I'm sorry, there's 2 people on the list, 1 didn't fail the drug test, and you got 1. Well, right now, you have how many, you have 26 trimmers, and you have how many guys, ladies and guys work?
We have vacancies, we just filled 5.
Which is
And then
tremendous.
one of them decided to go to.
But how many vacancies out of 26 people do you have right now?
6.
Okay.
We're
so
going
we
to be trying provisional appointments, which is unusual, but we're saying, get them on board, and we'll test them later. We have 6 months to test them, and just to get the manpower. But we had such a positive experience with the waiver and corrections, we didn't even have to use it.
Right.
We got 300 people in just a couple months, because they didn't have that pressure of knowing they had to sell their house, you know, or move immediately. It was taken off of them. So I think this is a good experiment with the police and with the tree trimmer to see with that how that residency waiver can
Right.
work for
Well, I
us.
think that's what it was put in place for, because it talks about if you have, and the skill doesn't have to be a rocket scientist. The skill is something that we need to feel that we're not feeling, okay, and we're not getting it done. So my next question I have is, so is the number of times you cut, is that based on just how much money you have?
Correct.
Okay.
And our equipment, which has been told recently for the first time, some folks have admitted it, Parks and Forestry is at the low end of the pole. Refuse, fire trucks are all up here. Somebody said, well, Greg, why don't you put in a capital request? And I said, for what you need. And I said, you know what? I used to meet with Pat Dunn and Chris Amos, mostly Pat Dunn. I'd go over their capital, and I know money's not hanging from a tree in the city, we're hurting. But the capital replacement priority list, and I'd say, the first Parks or Forestry equipment I'm seeing is at number 120, and they're like, yeah, that's right. So I'd put down, I'd change it up, say, here's our needs, and they'd throw it back, and they'd go, you guys aren't getting anything.
Squeaky wheel gets the.
Oh, I've tried, and so
Okay,
so I
right.
quit asking. You
Right.
get beaten down. The other day I called Alan, I check with him weekly we meet. How many ag tractors do you have running on the street today? He said 8. I said, and we have 34 in forestry, right? Yes. So you have 26 tractors down to do 20,000 lots? Yes. Parks, 58 zero-turn and I'm crying now, but 58 zero-turn mowers. Kim Hagley, how many you got running now? 26? Okay. So trust me, I've been telling my boss, we cannot, these are basic services citizens demand. You know, you can have, all due respect to my friends at the fire department, you have all the firehouses and all the firemen, I want them to save my family and my house. But when you come into a city and drive around and go, wow, I don't even want to be in this neighborhood, those are basic services citizens demand, and we cannot provide them. So to answer your question, if we could, well, let's say we expanded, let's say we give a 50% increase on those cutters in the summer. You know, give us, 130, 140 if we can't get 200. Waivers on tree trimmers. And we're trying outsourcing. It's not working out. We did the first year. We have a McKee Brothers, no relation to Mr. McKee.
I know.
First year they did okay. We have them in the 3rd and 4th ward this year doing buildings. We have not been impressed with their outsourced work. We had to try something because we can't get the people.
Wow.
In parks, we've outsourced 2 parks. They did, first contractor bailed on us. So we lost 16 employees. They said we couldn't hire. Well, then we had North Riverfront Park and St. Marcus Park. We picked those parks. Well, we were doing them ourselves for the April and May, so it killed us. The whole point is forestry, the needs are there. And if we wanna keep staying at a 1.2 million budget, static, and here come the properties upwards, you're never gonna get anywhere, and it's embarrassing.
So is that legal for them to outsource? That's what I want to know.
They can only outsource if they're not supplanting. There's 4 mentions in Article 1 of the charter that talk about that if you are going to supplant, it's a problem, and it has to go to the vote of the people. So I think that's my position as director, is I will not allow, and I've had to, when you said cease and desist, I have, with the airport and
That's your cease and
the police, where it's like they were, and last night with Jimmy Edwards, we clarified again, like, no, you're not gonna go outside the system. And I allowed it in the, with the fleet, the heavy fleet equipment people who work
But
on
they
the
didn't
truck.
supplant.
But they didn't supplant.
Right.
And the nice thing is sometimes there's a danger that when you use the outsourcing companies, your people leave to go with them. But what was nice is we picked up a few people from the, when they saw our operations and they liked the city. We got a couple fleet maintenance people from these outside part-time, workers. So that's what we hope happens, is they like our culture, but.
Yeah, and in forestry, we did not replace people. Our budget did not get cut to accommodate for the contractual services. It was extra, so it allowed us, with the exception of 8 tractors running in a given day, it allowed us to leave our folks alone and yet get more expanded resources, So we didn't get them contracted at the expense of employees. It was in addition to, which is unheard of.
We're having to I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
We're having to really get creative. I mean, with Greg, normally we only allow people to work a certain period of time, and then there has to be a break, and Greg posed something to me, I'm like, gosh, you're right. My other deputy had said, no, you gotta stop this, and I'm like, just keep them off for a week, and then we'll keep them up through October, because we know the grass doesn't stop
Right.
growing, so.
Right.
And we're also, in a lot of our areas, not just Greg's area, but with refuse and with towing, we're doing more and more trainees where we're taking local people, and maybe they don't have their CDL yet, or they don't have the experience.
Just a different.
We're putting them through the training period, and then they become qualified, so we're having to do that.
We just did that for forestry.
Yeah, we're bringing people on without a CDL license. I said, Alan, do you have room in the truck to put them in there while we train them quickly to take their tests? He said, yeah, we gotta do it. Because having a CDL,
Right.
it's a lot more
Right.
stringent than having a Class
It's
F
hard
that
to
I have.
get, and originally Dr. Prince thought that she could train them, but when we looked into the legalities of it, it just didn't work.
So we'll bring them on without it, and then they gotta get it in their working
And
test
do
period.
we have somebody here at the city, not Dr. Prince, anybody else that could train them?
Streets does it.
Okay, streets.
Janice Garibaldi used to do it for forestry.
That's
Okay.
great, and we give them a 10% differential to do it, so it's an incentive. So when those
Right.
people act as a trainer, the appointing authority asks me, and then, they can get that as a special increase because we know that they're performing a higher level function.
Right.
So when we have seasonal workers, do they have to be city residents also?
No,
No.
Okay.
they can live in Illinois, wherever.
Okay. And, what's my other question? So I had run this by Alan, and so I want to just throw it out here. If we can't get more workers, then to me, we should have to look around to what we have as a benefit. What we have in many neighborhoods, especially my neighborhood, we have people who are taking care of their property, and right next to it is a LRA house. Most times, those people will cut the front yard. Okay, a lot of times, and I know sometimes they might throw your inspectors off because they don't want their front yard looking crazy. They would cut the backyard if there was some incentive. So what I came up with and kind of been running this around by people is that why wouldn't we do just like we've been doing with the city, which is the city sends us a notice. Why couldn't citizens send a notice to LRA? And I want to put this in a form of a board bill and speak with LRA, but I wanted to talk to you guys about it first and say, hey, I live next door to your house, click, click, here's a picture, it's in violation of the city law, and so let them go and cut the grass. It's right next door to them. We'd have all these workers. We could either agree to an amount that it would pay, or, that it would be charged $40, $50. I think you guys charge a lot more. The citizens have a reason to want to cut that grass and even trim back the hedges and things and keep it nice. And if LRA doesn't pay them back at the end of the year or by 5 years, if they haven't paid them, what would be the problem in letting them have that property if they want it?
Doesn't bother me.
Is there anything?
Well, they have
that-
they have a
Like
mow
a
to
mow to
own.
own.
They have a
Right,
mow to
but
own.
only something bigger,
There's
okay?
no
because-
workers' comp or condition of property. I can't think of any applicable laws that would even be
Right.
invoked.
I see those good citizens a lot in
Right.
the field, and you just, I pull over and say, hey, because you know what they're doing, you say, hey, thanks a lot.
Exactly.
Well,
And they say, I
look
just
at
don't want my
Operation
property
Brightside
looking
for us.
bad, you
Right.
know?
Exactly, so.
I have no problem with that, if
But-
LRA may say otherwise.
Well, but I'm just saying, I'm gonna talk to LRA about it because it is not fair to the residents. If we have a law and you're in violation of the law, then you were saying you bill them, they should be billed. Because
Right.
they're really under the state entity, okay? So since you're a commissioner, so commissioners don't have to do what aldermen say. Since you're a separate entity, you have to keep your property just like everybody else. And to me, we as a city, we kind of take that hit. But it really isn't city property, it's LRA property. And my husband used to be the chair of LRA, okay, under Clarence Harmon. And so if they can't keep their property up, then they ought to be able to have the citizens go on to their property, cut it, send them a bill, whatever it is, and we can come to some kind of agreement. But I just wanted to see if there was some problem with you, because I do intend to take it to Otis and Laura and other people and the commissioners and say, why is it okay for you to let your property have grass up to here? It's making the whole neighborhood look bad, okay? And people wouldn't mind, but when I hear from them, they don't wanna go and do all this work on property that they have no investment in. And if there's a way for them to own it, or for LRA to have to, if they sell it, have a lien against it so that when you sell it, you have to pay these people back, okay? And you can't sell it for an amount that's less than what you owe them, and after 5 years, if you haven't paid them back, then they get the property, they can do what they want to. So just, any thoughts?
I don't have
good
a
to
problem
me.
with it.
Interesting.
Yeah, I always thought it'd be interesting if forestry was only in the business of either doing all LRA only or all private, one or the other, and have
Exactly.
somebody else handling
Exactly.
one. That way, forestry could either be commended or criticized by their production by just doing one, because then forestry's doing a great job cutting all these LRAs, and look how high the private is, or vice versa. That's
Right.
another, but I have no
Or the
problem. I'm not a-
parks, Greg, too. I mean, we get,
Right.
the aldermen talk about the parks, and it's like, you've got the emphasis on the private, residential things, but then some of the people are really upset about the parks where the grass.
Correct.
I know, I've seen,
Correct.
This
and
year's
they're
the worst
beautiful.
year
So
ever.
does,
The water.
parks, cuts, all the parks, do they cut Forest Park?
Yeah, with
So
the,
ten-
right, they do we have 109, and half of our park acreage is in Forest Park alone.
So why is it that I never see Forest Park hacked like I see the rest of the parks? So that's,
With all due respect, if you drive through it right now, it is not up to previous
Okay.
year Forest Park
Okay.
standards. We are hurting, we're working with Forest Park Forever. Actually, I met with them recently, and they were saying, some of these areas, that's your responsibility. We do the trash cans and the cutting. They don't look good, Greg. I said, tell me about it.
Okay.
And I told you the equipment figures. Talked to Jay, Jay was in here, Todd, he knows. And so Forest Park is gonna bring some contractors in that they're paying for out of their pocket to cut some areas and work with us.
well, I
Because
needed that answer because that's what I'm hearing. And I've never seen Forest Park. I thought it was areas where they just have wild grass or whatever. I've never
Oh,
seen
no.
them look like,
it looks, like Alderwoman, I had a guy call me recently, and he drove through Forest Park, and Forest Park's a gem, and we want all our parks to be a gem. And he said, I almost called you, Hayes, and gave you a hard time. I said, what's the problem? He said, I saw 2 of your parks guys on Cricket Field with weed eaters. And I said, yeah. I said, probably kind of in the middle of the field or near it. He said, not in the middle, but in near it. He goes, I'm thinking, look at these idiots. They got 2 guys standing there with weed eaters. And he said, you know what it hit me? They don't have the equipment.
Correct.
So they're doing something. They don't have the mowers to be sitting on going back and forth. He goes, at least, and he thought, I'm not gonna call you and give you a hard time because these guys are at least saying, I gotta do something. They're weed eaters in Forest Park in a big
I've seen
expansive
them.
area.
Yeah.
so,
Yeah, he was apologetic. He goes, I almost called you. He said, no, they're doing something.
okay. So
So
what
that's
kind of replacement? So I know because they've been across the front pages about the trash, okay? And so then, and we charge and we're getting some money in, even though we don't spend all the money for the way we should with paying the trash bills. So what kind of equipment replacement deal have you got going on right now.
Well, we've estimated, and Todd and I talked recently, we've got probably $2 million in needs in grass cutting equipment. Now, I can sharpen that pencil better. I don't want to shoot from the hip, Alderwoman, but I can get you that. I can get you
Okay.
the replacement costs of, we're running 1985 tractors in forestry, a few of them, aren't we? 85s.
Yeah.
That's 33 years old? Not all of them.
Just
We
a
have-
couple, just a
Just
couple.
a
Okay,
They're
so
still
when you
hanging in.
when you get things, you get new things, right?
Yes, but,
Okay.
yes.
Is
if-
there,
if
so
we
let me
get
ask
them.
this as somebody from a working class family. Okay, so is there anything, and maybe cities don't do this, where maybe richer cities sell their products, sell their equipment, and it's not new, but it's been really, do we ever buy used equipment?
Yes, I work with the water division, and water division being an enterprise,
We're gonna let you speak.
It was something silly.
water division and airport, I've had a relationship for years. I'm like their little brother. Whenever their stuff goes to junk, we buy it off of
Okay.
them. So that's the only, Mike Burnich and I are tight. I've taken their hand-me-downs, they were gonna surplus, and that's how bad it is.
And then do we have somebody that does the repairs on them and
Equipment
brings it up to-
services is supposed to, excuse me.
Okay,
Yeah, so we are, it's reared its ugly head this year. Alderman Arnowitz knows, everybody knows. It has reared its head. People, and that's when they say, you don't put in capital requests. I got tired. I got beaten down. Why ask for something you know you're not gonna get? But I'll start doing it again.
please. Ms. Thompson?
Just to go a little bit off of subject here, yeah, we buy used equipment. We used to buy all the police officers' cars from them. And we paid for them.
Okay, but I'm talking about
revenue paid for
tractors and
them, and we
trailers,
paid for 'em.
tractors
To give
and trucks
back
and
our
things.
Todd assured me he's
what the
gonna be
building
working on
inspectors
that
drive.
for us to gear up for the spring, because he knows, Todd doesn't like to hear excuses, and I said, I'm not here to give you them, but we gotta state the facts.
Correct.
We got, the facts
Facts are the
are,
facts.
we'll get you, we're gonna have our whole equipment needs by division, parks and forestry, and here's what we need, not greedy, here's what we need just to do the adequate job.
Well, go ahead.
So, Greg, so if we can find $2 million to get you on the road, does that will purchase pretty many riding mowers and?
Yes, and
what
ag
you need?
tractors, yeah, we're not talking about string trimmers, but
Right,
yes,
right.
exactly what you're talking about.
And
we're
that's the
working-
biggest thing we need the most.
Yep, zero turns, that are the pretty things that go down in the parks, make a better cut in your parks,
Right.
and then the ag tractors on vacant lots.
Absolutely.
That's what we're talking about.
Okay.
Into full time?
And
Yeah.
it's not Todd's fault, he's realized the other divisions
that
have
now.
been, we just don't,
Right.
we don't get supplied with what we need. He wouldn't hesitate.
And obviously, that's been going on for years because it's all
Yeah.
festered where everything is just breaking, period.
Yeah.
Right,
Well, I
Paul?
think go ahead.
I just was talking to Linda, one of the things that I really would like to pursue is a cost estimate of what it would take, your career seasonal employees and convert them because they don't have to retest
Yes.
into full-time.
Yes.
Because I really like your idea about when it gets snowy out or cold and the grass is tough, then just what progress we could make if you just cleared out this crap. We'd have 5-10 years where you wouldn't have to deal with it.
Exactly.
And I'm really
That's
excited
right.
about that idea in terms of like doing a cost estimate of what that would be to simply mass convert those people into full-time if they were interested. And I
Sure.
think the vast majority of them would. And I think you'd also see your workers' comp claims go down because a lot of those people file the workers' comp claims towards the end of the
before.
season or things like that.
And do you have the money and wherewithal to get that done?
That's a budgetary issue. I mean, it's,
That's why I'm asking you, what kind of budget do you, because if we don't ever do these studies to have evidence and proof of what we need, and then we're just talking about it, okay? Just like, I don't like you, I want you to, if you need $10 million, I want you to say you need $10 million, and then let them say no, but at least we as the alder people know then that, everybody may think that you're just doing fine and you guys are just going off and taking extra lunch. We don't know that
Agreed.
until you ring the bells, okay? I know you from many, many years of working with you, but we have a lot of new people at the Board of Aldermen. In fact, half of our members haven't done 4 years yet, okay?
Sure.
So we need for them to see. Now they're seeing it because they've talked to me about, well, we're not getting our trees trimmed, and I take up for you guys. I said, well, I've known him for a long time. He's a hard worker. He came out, I needed something from his home and got me something, some plants and stuff like that. So, and that's the kind of person I am. I'll go and work in the alleys too. Roll up my sleeves, okay, do we need to do this? In fact, I got a group of men, we're gonna start being your secondary trimmers. I've talked to them and said, okay, the city can't can't get it just the way we want it, but hey, when they do it, let's us just get together. And so they have agreed, they're gonna go right behind you and trim the way they want it, okay? But we don't know if you don't let us know. And I don't want you to be beat down. I'm supportive. There are a lot of people that are supportive. We want the city workers to do a good job. I've said this over and over again. I think everybody is a first responder. I absolutely do. And all you gotta do is have a problem. Now with Forestry not being able to cut the way they're supposed to, you're my first responders right now. I'm not having fires, okay? But I'm having everybody burn my rear end about how come. They are, okay? If you think I'll raise heck, and I have to have a meeting Saturday, okay? I'm gonna be the toast of the town, not in a good way, okay? I'm gonna be on that other end of the spitfire that I usually put out, okay? And I don't try to blame it on you, I take it because we have to do better, okay? But I can't do better if I don't know what you need. Another alderman, I think Alderman Honorwitz and I would work to see if other people could find something in there, you know, to find some more money. Maybe we can get you 2 million, maybe we can get you $1 million someplace.
Right.
And I do know the city is in financial trouble, so I'm gonna make this statement again. We have $6 million coming back to our general revenue, and I know the convention center wants that money. I met with them, and I told her I like Kitty and everything, but with all the problems we have, I'm not saying don't give them some, maybe give them 1 million or no, at the most 2, but if we can bring $4 million a year back into our budget and to address the things that we need first, you know, and not only buying equipment, but also paying our workers a decent wage. I'm still for that, you know. Of course people are disappointed about getting a 1.5%. It was hard for me to carry that board bill. I carried it. If it would have been anybody but me, I would have been, no, okay, that's my vote, okay? But I knew what it meant, and it was, I want to compliment the mayor again. It was something. It was something. Before that, we haven't done it in a long time.
And it was not her administration, but I will say this, I mean, and I wrote this back to the director of operations. I was demonized by when we had money back in 2006, 2007 for trying to put together a system that matched inflation.
Right.
And then I get an email from administration complaining about that I don't pay, what was it? I can't remember what it was. Somebody as much as Chesterfield. And I wrote back, I said, how short is your memory? You have got to be shitting me. And I did, because I said, you know, we went and advocated for this, and, you know, where were you at then? You know, so I am gonna go out and we're gonna do an RFP to see how much it will cost to do a study, so at least
For the whole city.
for the whole city, everybody, and let's see how we stack up.
Right.
Because if you don't have the blinders off, you have no idea what you're really competing against.
If you don't know what you don't know. And I think most people who serve on this Board of Aldermen want to make sure city workers have the correct equipment that they need, and also that you get paid correctly. And we can't support you if we don't know what we're supporting, okay? And sometimes there's a false narrative that's put out there, and it's just a false narrative, okay? And so we don't know it. And so anything I can do to help you, I will.
I appreciate that.
I will say that I have been requested to have an evening meeting about this. As I said, I didn't expect you here.
I'm sorry if you came uninvited.
No, you're never not invited. But I might still have it. I want to talk to the people because people want to show their frustration. And sometimes when you make enough noise, and it becomes front page news, okay? I talked about the trash at will. That's why I quoted all through it, because I keep saying, oh, you better look at this trash, and nobody heard me until they heard me, okay? So this is another problem that we're having, and some of the wards don't have it because they don't have this, but then when I'm looking at Ward 22 with 1,381 vacant properties, I'm looking at, what is this, Ward 3 and 4, oh my God, I'm looking at 18 with 800. They're all the people they're having the problems too. And what I tell people who don't have it, because I did used to have it when it was the 20th, is that don't think that you are insulated from it, because you don't have it right now, it's gonna come your way, okay? It's better to stop it and say, good thing I don't have this, okay? So I think you have a widespread support. We want trash picked up, we want grass cut, we want lots cuts. I appreciate everything you all do, and I love personnel. They know, they're the people who trained me, because I didn't know what I was doing when I took this chair.
Oh, we trained you pretty good. We set her loose on the health people.
I didn't know what I was doing, but they helped me a lot. So anything I can do, or members of this committee can do to help you, I think we will.
I have to say, oh, man,
Go ahead.
I was just gonna laugh because you talked about you think you're insulated. How long was it in our office, 7 or 8 years ago, our dear friend Joanne Williams said, first it's gonna be trash, then it's gonna be weeds, then it's gonna be rats, bats, and she goes, you're gonna have West Nile sometime. Well, St. Louis County got it before us, but now the bats and the rats and the hedgehogs, they're all coming.
That's exactly right.
Well, we'll have all that equipment list.
Okay.
I just want to say one thing, that being an employee of 35 years with the city, I mean, I can go back and we don't know what happened, but there was a time when city employees got an anniversary raise
Yes,
plus a
and
regular
across
raise,
the
and
board.
it came to 8% a year. I know our population's smaller, things have happened, but I'm embarrassed as an alderman to have to vote the budget out, and they're only getting the 1.5. And I went through the time where me as a manager had to take 3 or 4 weeks vacation with no pay. You know, we have employees that just live from paycheck to paycheck. And employees, once they cash their check, pay their bills, they may only have $30, $40, $20 left.
If they're
over.
lucky.
And I'll be honest with you, I've been there and done that, and I still live from paycheck to paycheck. You know, I still have bills, I have a family, and so, you know, what bothers me the most is people saying aldermen are overpaid. Well, you know what? Some aldermen are lucky enough to have full-time jobs. I prefer to put my time in my ward.
I call you guys full-time
So,
jobs, I think it is.
Yeah. So at one time it was a part-time job. Back in the Mr. Kennedy and Villa days, it wasn't as bad.
I'm not gonna
You
say
could
that,
pick
because I
the
wasn't
phone up.
there. I'm not saying that.
But, I mean, you could pick the phone up and it was a different area. We had employees and things
That's
could
right.
get done. So, you know, it's just changing, but you
It's
know,
so bad.
I just feel bad for the city employees. That 1.5 doesn't even cover the raise of
Doesn't do,
healthcare.
it. No, they end
We
up.
upgraded the comptroller and our payroll people because they have citywide responsibility. And Greg knows, we still lose people because they can't afford parking.
Yeah.
So it's hard to get people that want to work downtown. They go to the airport where they get,
Streets.
you know, or streets, free parking, or if you live in the airport, you
Yeah.
get that
Right.
great big,
You get extra money to go.
almost $4,000, I
Right.
think it is. So
Exactly.
it's a real problem, but we appreciate all the support of Alderwoman Tyson.
For sure.
She's really beat up Express Scripts, which we enjoy.
Okay, Alderman Williamson just got here,
I'm
and
sorry, I apologize.
no
for my
problem.
tardiness.
We were just getting ready to wrap up. Did you have any questions at
No,
all?
I just hate that I missed the discussion. I just appreciate the hard work that you're putting in
I think we
with the
covered
public
for it,
employees.
Frank.
You covered, good.
So you're gonna get
I
us,
think
he's gonna get us a wish list of what
Right.
what they
Okay.
need, so kind of a little summary. Right now, they got 80 to 85 people, they need about 200 people, okay? That's how
Okay.
much
Well,
understaffed.
that's kind of what I wanted to elaborate just a little bit on. I agree with Alderman from the 12th, and I've been here about the same time. He's been here about 35 years, so. And, you know, he's right. You know, we used to get a 3%, 5% raise. And it's just a shame at the way things have happened over the years, and you really can't point the finger. And I don't know if you discussed this or the committee discussed it. What can we do to generate more revenue for the city? I understand the county has a large sale tax base, so they do very well. But, you know, the revenue continues to shrink here in the city of St. Louis. And I know it's been a problem with the trash trucks and with the, you know, tractors and what have you, and the equipment breaking down, and the services are getting a little, you know, not really up to par. And a lot of people ask me, well, why does the city let that happen? How do they just let all these machinery break down and what have you? Don't they phase it in, phase it out? And I was just wondering, you know, as a personnel director and as director of Parks Department, are we working on some systems or some things that we can you know, we don't enter this tunnel or go down this road again where we have this problem with all these trucks breaking down, equipment collapsing all at one time. Is it a way we can phase it in, phase it out? Is it a way, you know, is it an equation when it comes to the mathematics of the dollars to really make it work for us or not? And I don't know if you guys discussed that.
Well, you have to stagger, otherwise, whatever purchases you make, everything gets old at the same time.
Right.
So we've always talked with Equipment Services about that when funds avail. So yeah, that's the key. You don't wanna just, it's nice to get 5 million in equipment in 1 year, but it pays to, this year you get this much, this year and the next year and so on, so.
And
We
have
did
to
kind of, we discussed it, I just had asked if we even bought used equipment. I said, because I grew up in a working class family, so you didn't always get new stuff, okay? Alderman Williamson is also the chair of Ways and Means, okay? So, we skewed you while you were gone. We said Ways and Means is the reason we don't get enough money.
That was my fault. Maybe all the one from the first and the 12th is gonna put you in charge of finding $2 million.
That's
I'm gonna do
correct.
my best.
We need 2
We
million,
can
that's
find-
exactly.
we can
but-
find 2
Now,
million.
this is the person,
We can
it's
find
good
2
he's on our committee,
Yeah.
that we need to talk to.
You might have to find more than that if we do our pay study and come up with some reasonable for
Yeah.
employees.
So that's the other thing, that they're gonna do a pay study.
And we will share
need
that study
We need
with
that,
you guys.
Okay, and he's gonna get us a list of what he needs for machinery and stuff.
Yep.
And we told him not to be
Good,
beaten
okay.
down, that we are supportive of him,
Oh,
and his
yeah,
committee is
yeah.
We can
supportive.
just take away from the convention center.
Yes.
But I keep bringing up that $6 million that's
Yeah.
coming back. We get
Right,
that,
right.
that's coming back.
Yeah, I know.
And, I mean, I know they're out there now counting their votes and getting it, but shame on the Board of Aldermen, and I tell you, I might be doing a all-nighter if we decide to give that $6 million. Oh, yeah, okay. If we give that $6 million to the convention center and tell the people out here that we can't cut your grass, we can't pick up
Can't do
trash,
that. No.
we can't pay our employees, but we can give $6 million, okay? I wanna have a beautiful convention center, but before we do that, we need to do our basic services.
That's right.
And we
I
need to
agree.
support the
I
people
agree.
who do them. When
We
people
need
are paid a
departments.
fair wage, they
Yeah.
come to work a lot happier and probably extend themselves a little bit more if they're paid a fair wage.
Yes.
And I guess you guys are having a problem with truck drivers too, aren't you?
Oh, we're having trouble. We're
Yeah,
probably having
that's what
trouble
I
with
heard.
everything.
40 job classes. And,
Yeah.
and one of the things we talked about, Alderman, is really,
Gonna be late.
Okay,
okay?
thank you so much.
you, Alderman.
And I'll look for your, whatever
Yeah.
you get.
And I'll
okay?
throw parks in there as well, if that's
I was
cool,
just
unless you
afraid
just
you-
wanna
Oh,
focus.
I was
right,
just
yes,
afraid
I
to
do.
tell.
Okay, Alderman.
Skin cancer stuff.
Oh,
Greg.
I'm sorry.
That's all right if
Folks,
he leaves.
Yeah, sure.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right,
Yeah,
that's right. We
okay,
had
great.
great,
Sorry.
thank you.
No problem,
I
buddy.
appreciate it.
No
we
problem.
were thinking, Alderman, too, I want to do a study in terms of what it would cost us to take our 300 seasonal employees and convert them into full-time, which Alderman Tyler's had some really good ideas about how we could use them during the winter months. And that's a simple transaction,
Yes,
because
sir.
we already pay for their health insurance. And then secondly,
Oh, okay.
I am adamant, somebody has to take responsibility for, I wouldn't say, like redlining or marking positions, at least through attrition. We still have too many management positions. And that's where we need to increase our labor force. I mean,
I
we
see,
really need,
yeah.
you get rid of $100,000 a year manager and you can hire 3 employees sometimes. And we need to do that. Linda saved money in the past, and I've challenged the administration to go back and look at our old studies, which some of them have never implemented any of those policies. And I think that's
A
something we
little
need to
too
look at.
top-heavy in some
Yes,
departments.
yes. We talked about the fact that I've already eliminated forcefully one of the 5 deputy chiefs at the fire department. Now, Ways and Means approved that, and I was mad. I said, you've got 3 shifts.
No, Ways and Means did, ENA did.
Oh, I'm sorry, E&A, not Ways and Means. E&A approved.
Don't insult the chair.
No, no. Ways, I get this always caught up in it. Not Ways and Means. E&A approved the addition of a 5th deputy,
Yeah.
and I
We
changed.
tried to cut them and they wouldn't.
I know you did, and anyway, I got him at the end.
We got
And
'em.
that's the same issue with the police department, is,
Right.
you know, I literally had a captain come up to me and ask me if she could be my driver. I said, what do you mean driver? I'll drive you around. I said, I don't even have a car. What are you talking about? A captain's salary, driving me around?
Exactly.
So we've got some thoughts,
Right.
and all the women gave us some good thoughts about what we could do with those people, you
Right.
know, if we can convert them.
Larry, you brought up the sergeant and the staffing at the police. I know and I have the staffing pattern for the fire department. I know exactly how many deputies they should have, exactly how many bats they should have, captains, firefighters, by shift. We don't have that for the police, and I don't know why. There is a staffing pattern for everything.
Yeah, and I think
They, you know, we
Since
should
they are
have a
not-
staffing
they
pattern
are
for how
under
many
city
sergeants.
control. I mean,
Then
we
we
can
should-
come up with a
Right.
pattern or a
Staffing
plan
pattern.
moving forward through attrition, retirement, whatever.
identify-
You're not
They just added 4 more sergeants, and I don't think they need
Yeah,
4
no,
more sergeants.
No.
You know,
no.
but until you have that staffing pattern where you can say, for instance, the deputies, there's 3 shifts, A, B, and C, and a marshal. It's 4 deputies.
I understand. Oh,
I mean, I
That is
know
a staffing pattern.
because I'm at the police departments a lot.
I know you are.
So I see what goes on, I see what goes on. And I'll tell you, there's one sergeant in the 1st district who might be.
I'm gonna cut you, we're gonna do this afterwards, because we got
Okay.
people from parks and everything. And if you didn't have any specific questions, they have been really good, I didn't even expect them. And I really wanna just tell you, I love you, Alan, okay? So you do it. I didn't think anybody I could like as much as Greg.
He's always
I didn't think I could like anybody as much as Greg, but you really do a good job, I appreciate it. And so I'll be looking forward, and we are here to support you. As long as I'm the chair of public employees, we are supportive of public employees, okay?
Appreciate
Thank
that
you.
very much.
Yes, we do. I appreciate it. And we're gonna adjourn this meeting and then.